Woo! Everybody, hello, Tony here. Welcome to Pod Tiki, another episode of Inside the Mug. See what I'm drinking here? If you guys keep up with if you follow all the content, this is the Dr. Funk that I just made on the how-to video. And now I'm sitting out back here, and apparently the time that I decided to, the time that I set aside to record this Inside the Mug happens to coincide with a giant windstorm happening in Nashville right now, so, if it gets kind of windy out here, I'll have to transfer myself in the doors. So, here on Inside the Mug, we like to go over the last episode, talk about a little bit of behind-the-scenes stuff, get inside the mug. Right off the bat, this is kind of an easy one to go over because I deliberately chose the Dr. Funk for this episode. As I was perusing my cocktail books, my tiki books, I knew that after doing 2 non-tiki drinks in a row, I had to get back to tiki. I mean, I hadn't done a tiki drink in 2023 yet, so I knew I had to get back to tiki. Otherwise, we're not. What kind of tiki podcast are we? So there's that, and then also the last episode, the Sazerac episode, was so in depth, was so long, was so it was so arduous to kind of get through. I hope I made it seem not that way, but it was really hard to write and really hard. A lot of information. I actually, my wife and I actually toyed with the idea of making it a 2-parter, but that almost would have made more work for myself. So that's why I kind of cut it down to just the facts. But I knew that I needed something kind of easy, kind of simple, and when I was perusing my tiki books, the Dr. Funk just came out as something that was super simple, but also extremely tiki. Like it was on Don the Beachcomber's original menus. I mean, Beach Bum Berry does versions of it. Smuggler's Cove copies it or covers it. I mean, every respectable and unrespectable tiki bar or tiki bartender has a version of a Dr. Funk. Dr. Wong, Mr. Wong, Mr. Funk, like anything that you can think of, it's been called. But it's that standard, like rum, grenadine, herb saint mixture, So that was the reason why I chose that one. And there was, coming off the, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here, but coming off the Sazerac, going into this, another drink that also used herb saint, that actually wasn't on purpose. I know that sometimes I try to back cocktails up that use similar ingredients so I can use the stuff that I already have, but that was just a happy accident, honestly. I happened to have the herb saint, and there's, I talk about this in the episode, but I feel like I try to stay as classic, as authentic to the drinks as I can, and Don the Beachcomber used herb saint or Pernod, but I think he used herb saint mainly because of that concoction that he made with herb saint and Angostura that he called was it Herbstora, and it was a I'm trying to think if that's the right name. I think it's Herbstora, but he liked that flavor a lot, and so do I. I've actually been on an absinthe kick ever since like last fall. I tried some at a French restaurant here, and then like some real stuff, and I've had it before, but I the real traditional way, and then kind of got hooked on it, and then realized that I have like Pernod and herb saint at home, and yes, it's not real wormwood absinthe, but I get asked sometimes when I make these cocktails, why not use absinthe? And I talk about it in the podcast, but basically it boils down to the fact that absinthe is like $80 a bottle, and you can get Pernod or herb saint for like $30 a bottle. So I save my absinthe for sipping, and I usually use the herb saint or the Pernod when it comes to mixing. But I even like Pernod, I'll even drink like it's absinthe, like with a little bit of cold water. I prefer to not use the sugar cube. I like just the cold water and the anise. But if I order it out and they use the cube, I enjoy that as well. The sugar cube, yeah. So it was kind of just really fortuitous that happened to work out, because I've just been into this absinthe kind of anise flavored cocktails for a while now, all through the winter. When we went to New York last winter, went to a French restaurant down there and had some, and it was really, I just been, and that coincided with reading the Hemingway cocktail book, the To Have and Have Another by Philip Green, I believe. And Hemingway talked a lot about drinking the absinthe cocktails and absinthe on the there, and I'm a big Hemingway fan, so it all kind of just worked out together where it just came together. And then the Sazerac, and then I had the Absinthe, and then I ran into this, and I needed a tiki drink that was OG tiki to get back to the roots of the podcast, but then also that was something easy, because I didn't want to sit there and do another Sazerac. It was like it took a lot. Luckily, March was a longer month, so I got the time. But yeah, so the only thing to really talk about as far as the cocktail goes was the rum choices. I talk about it in the podcast, but the story was, I wanted to make the Beach Plum Berry recipe, the Don Beach recipe, the OG, and then the Smuggler's Cove recipe. Those were the two that seemed like they were the most ubiquitous, the most popular. There's a recipe from Difford's Guide that uses a more of a French or European style version of it, where they use real absinthe and things like that. And they always overcomplicate their drinks. They're a really great resource, but as far as making the drink, also I can't get some of that stuff here. Which leads us to the rum. When you use the Don Beach recipe that calls for a light Puerto Rican rum, I tried it with it was a Don Q and even Flor de Caña, which is like my Flor de Caña, I think, is the closest thing to like Havana Club Cuban style rum that I found on the market. I love it. But still, it fell flat. It made the herb saint kind of too prevalent. It didn't really taste like there was any rum in it. And I kind of chalked that up to the fact that, well, the rums that Don Beach would have been using back then, the Spanish-style rums from the Caribbean had a little bit more flavor, a little bit more age to it back then. A little bit more like Havana Club Tres Años from Cuba, and they still have like a really good balanced aging on there. It tastes really good. There's some depth to it. Not saying anything bad about the modern brands, Bacardi, Don Q, they're really good. Flor de Caña, there's something missing from that Cuban rum, and so I had to find a way to back it up. Now you go to somewhere like Martin Cate's recipe, and he used, adding to the name Dr. Funk and the Funk, he used a Hamilton Pot Still Black. I love Hamilton rums. I can't get Pot Still Black around me. If you can get Pot Still Black and you want to send me a bottle, I would donate it to the podcast. I will be happy to accept it. I love it. I've had it at some bars, but I can't buy it in the liquor stores around here. Closest thing we have is the Hamilton Pot Still Gold. I say, okay, cool. I'll go and I'll get the gold, and I'll just add some Myers or something to it. And but I went to the store and they were out. All they had was Dr. Bird. And I don't really like Dr. Bird. I didn't want to buy it just to have it and then not want to drink it. So I ended up using some Smith & Cross as my pot still. And it was actually kind of fortuitous. I still would like to get the Hamilton because I liked sipping on that anyway. But it was a little bit, it worked out anyway, because I tried it with the Smith & Cross, and it was the funky flavor of it Jamaican funk just doesn't really go together with anise and absinthe. Not in this not when they're too prevalent. You know, in a zombie they go together well, but this didn't sit right here for me. With the pomegranate and everything, like it was fruity, and then you got the anise, and those two things go together. And then the Jamaican rum and the anise, maybe they go together. Jamaican rum and fruit go together, but all three together didn't pop to me. It just didn't feel like there was balance in there. And also when I made that Smuggler's Cove recipe, it kind of tasted a lot like a lot of his other drinks. But I talk about that in the episode, so I'm not going to go into too much of that here. What I settled on was, okay, what's a light, crisp rum that also has a little bit of roundness and depth and funkiness to it? I could have went straight Barbados. That probably would have been good in this cocktail. But I chose to go with a blend like Plantation 3-Star. Probitas probably would use as well. They're very similar in profile. But I am an unabashed, unapologetic fan of plantation rums. I think that the Plantation 3-Star, I think, is my favorite rum to use for daiquiris. So, and I'd say, well, that's got the perfect balance of like something light and crisp, and then some heavier, funkier, you know, richer, sweeter notes to it. And boy, was I right! It worked out perfectly in this cocktail. As I take another sip, actually. It just makes a great balance of fruitiness with the anise, with the rum is there. You know, when it's not the pot still rum was like too much there. The column still Spanish style rum, the Puerto Rican rum, was not there enough. This is prevalent, or it's not prevalent. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's there. Okay, I can't think of the word. It's there, but it's not overbearing, and it's over not too far back. So, yeah, I mean, despite the fact that this is like a foo-foo looking drink, it is really delicious. And it's kind of, with the herb saint and the effervescence that comes from a little bit of soda water, it really does give an exotic feel to it. So, I dig it. I also think it's a great spring cocktail because it's kind of light and fruity, but also with the licorice, the anise flavor gives it some depth. And so it's like we're still kind of we're not fully out of the regal kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of words today, probably because I've had a Dr. Funk. It's cured me of my cafard. But it's got a bit of classiness to it. Like, we're not totally out of like the classiness of winter, like the deep, rich home, like, you know, fancy dressing up. Like, I think of winter as like the time where you can actually put clothes on and not be uncomfortable because it's cool enough out, because I hate wearing clothes. So I think of winter like when I can dress up. So for me, winter signifies like, you know, putting on a suit or like a pea coat and a scarf and not like looking classy. So I think of that as my winter drinks. I think of being more like your speakeasy style drinks. You're a little bit more classy, a little bit more regal, a little bit more of having a little bit more aplomb. And summertime drinks, I think of more, you know, shorts and linen shirts. Actually, I put one on today because I was warmer out earlier, and now the wind's kicking. But when you add the kind of depth of like the funkier, kind of the smooth rums with the herb saint, and then you dash in the pomegranate and the soda water to kind of effervesce it a little bit, to kind of make it fruity and springy, it does have a nice, and this wasn't on purpose, this was kind of an accident, but it just has a nice transition from like, okay, we're in an in-between time here. We're in something funky, you know, and it's just what the doctor ordered, pun intended. So that's the Dr. Funk. That's really all I got to say about the episode. I also enjoyed making a drink that I can shake with regular ice, because let's face it, sometimes crushing ice, if you don't have like a pebble maker, if You know, if you don't want to spend $500 on a freaking crushed ice maker or pebble ice maker, like, it's really nice. It's a little bit of a refreshing to not have to sit there and make a bunch of crushed ice by hand. So I mean, there is something fun about getting the Louis bag and the mallet and just smashing that ice. But yeah. Also, I drink a lot of Mai Tais, so I go through my crushed ice often. In fact, I think I'll have a Mai Tai when I get done with this. Which, as I finish up, leads me to a big announcement. If you listen to the podcast already, to the very end, you already heard it, but some of you don't listen to the podcast, you just come here. I don't know why, this is not that entertaining to me, but welcome, thank you. Big announcement is that, depending on when you watch this, in a couple of months, the end of June 2023, Pod Tiki and me, Tony Mafitano, we are releasing Summer Sessions Volume 1. It's a 4-track EP of the songs that I've written. This started, well, I'm going to go back probably with like an online happy hour when they actually release. I didn't want to say anything about it until I have the songs in my hand. They're done, they're ready to go. And basically, a few years ago, if you guys listen to the podcast, if you've been listening for a while, you remember the story I talk about often, about how I was a very brooding writer, wearing a lot of black on black, drinking whiskey, and living in Nashville, and doing that whole thing. And then kind of fell into a bit of a depression, and my buddy Kyle came to me very wisely and said, just find something that makes you happy. And that's when I got into going back to my roots, where I came from, the east coast of Florida, and kind of cultivating this like tropical lifestyle in where I live, even though, you know, it can't make it last all year. But I started traveling a lot. I started going home and spending like weekends at the beach by myself, just as like little writing retreats. I started just going anywhere. Just so happened around that time I had gotten a new car. I had this pickup truck before that had horrible gas mileage, and then I got a new car. I got a little Honda Civic back in 2016, and that allowed me to be able to go places that are close to me, down to Florida a lot, things like that. Went to Jamaica, went to Cuba, went to Mexico, Hawaii for my honeymoon, although that was later. But and then, of course, growing up in Florida, I'd always been around that stuff. You know, Bahamas, all the beaches up and down the East Coast, West Coast of Florida, Gulf. And it's just what I really love. I had to get back to it. But I really started getting into it more. I really started reading a lot of Jimmy Buffett, who's a great novelist, by the way. Listening to a lot of new reggae that I didn't know about, all that white boy reggae stuff. Read a lot of Hunter S. Thompson, getting back into that stuff. And I've always been a Hemingway fan, but I started reading a lot of his stuff that took place in the Caribbean. It was just really a part of my life where I was getting back to the tropics. Even though I lived here in Tennessee, I was going to the tropics a lot. And I was really, the rest of my lifestyle was also kind of like taking an introspective, introspective kind of, introspective kind of turn. I was getting to like some of the things that I would come into later, a little bit of the finer things, cigars, rums, things like that. I was also getting back into religion and philosophy and things like that. I was single at the time, so I had a lot of time to spend by myself and get into that stuff. Trying to catch up on all the things I slacked on in my youth, my misspent youth, as Buffett says. But one of the things that I had come to Nashville for was to do music, was to do songwriting. And I had a mild success. Nothing got cut. No big guys ever got my stuff. But I wrote some good music. I made some really good friends, and I got to do some really cool things, play some good stages, things like that here. But never really made it, and was getting kind of realized that I had gotten in with some of the, maybe one got here and wasn't as good as I thought I was at first. Took a long time to get good, but in the meantime, kind of fell in with kind of the lazy crowd. there's this, and I had to get out of that. There's a faction of people that come to Nashville to write music that like the idea more than the actual business. And now, as I'm older and been through it, I like to think that I've found my way, but I did a lot of wasting time. So I kind of got just disenchanted with the whole thing, and also the business change. You know, the invent or the popularity, the rise in popularity of YouTube and things like that, social media, the old archetype for how to make it in music kind of changed, and I realized that it kind of passed me a little bit, and I was just kind of feeling bummed about it. That was kind of one of the things that added to my depression at the time. So I decided I wasn't going to write music commercially anymore. I was going to stop and just write stuff that I wanted. And I have a couple of those first songs that they're somewhere. I gotta find them. I don't remember them, but they're somewhere, and I gotta dig them back up. And I remember thinking to myself how freeing it was and how more my mind expanded, and how easy it was to write better when it was something I enjoyed writing about. And I started writing about beachy stuff. I started writing about where I was from. I started writing about the same stuff the same themes you have in any other music: love, relationships, money, drinking, partying, depression, all the stuff that's in every other genre of music, but just writing it through the lens of a guy from the beach who now lives in Nashville, and that's just pretty much how I just wrote it as me. And over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, I wrote a bunch of songs, but I picked, and then I just kind of played them. And at some point, my wife said to me, this was years later, what are you doing with these songs? I'm tired of hearing them, and nothing's happening. So it kind of lit the fire under my ass, especially because we're thinking about moving back to Florida. So I figured, well, before I leave Nashville, I gotta do something with these songs. So I picked the 4 best ones, the 4 that I felt the most strongly about, and I found 3 of my good friends that play in a band around here. I'm not going to drop their names yet because I'm not sure. They play in another band and I don't want to dox them and blow up their spot. But I found some good buddies of mine that know how to play reggae and beachy music, and then my wife did background vocals. I did the vocals, although I wasn't wanting to do it at first. She helped me, she trained me. She's a professional singer. So these are songs that I wrote, and I found a producer and then an engineer, or two producers that I trust, and I think the songs came out crazy. I think they came out great. I'm really excited to share them with you. So there's more in the works, but this is going to be the first release, and I really hope you guys like them. The idea originally is not that these are my songs that I'm going to put out in the world. I am going to do that. But the idea is that I'm hoping these songs will get to somebody that might want to cut them. Now, if not, that's fine. These are in posterity. They're my songs. They're my tracks. The musicians that played on them are immaculate. They're just exquisite. They're perfect. It's everything I could have wanted, and I'm happy if this is just the finished product. But the songwriter in me is always hoping that, well, maybe somebody that I look up to will find these songs. Maybe a Jimmy Buffett or a Kenny Chesney will get a hold of these songs and decide to cut one. Now, you're living out there in the rest of the world, and you're thinking, oh, this guy's got delusions of grandeur. What the hell is he talking about? But when you live here in Nashville, coming across celebrities like that seem way out of reach is actually not that far-fetched. You'd be surprised through the network of producers and things like that, how kind of easy, no, not easy, but how many times it happens where your song finds it to the right hands. So anyway, that's the idea, and I'm probably going to do an online happy hour or something around the release. Probably going to do a party for people living here in Nashville, and then they're going to be released on the podcast website for now. And yeah, I mean that's how it's gonna be. And I guess whatever I come up with, I'm trying to figure out some way to do a giveaway or some kind of hype or something. There's gonna be some promotion coming soon, so whatever I end up doing with that, I'm trying to work on something. I got a lot of like videos and pictures and stuff to go along with it, but yeah, so any ideas, let me know. Hope you guys like them when they come out. I'll be in touch more to let everybody know what's happening with that when it gets closer to the release. Trying to coincide it with the beginning of summer. First day of summer is at the end of June, so I'm thinking somewhere middle to late June, but I don't know if I can make it that long. I'm kind of anxious. I want to get them out. So yeah, I guess that's all for now, and I will see you guys next time we go inside the mug. I gotta get out of here. It's kind of cramped inside the mug. I gotta go because ironically, there's not a bar. There's no bar inside the mug. I have to go outside the mug to get a drink and then bring it back inside the mug. I need to build like a mini bar inside the mug here. So anyway, guys, I guess keep it tiki, and yeah, I guess I'll just holler at you guys next time. I need to see if I can get back in here. All right.